1. Everyone knows that you shouldn't move to the first floor, but circumstances forced me to do it. For the first couple of months, the apartment above me was quiet. I don't think anyone lived there because I never heard anything. That changed as soon as fall came. When I got home from work one day, I noticed loud footsteps above me and figured that someone was moving in. I actually met the neighbor when I was leaving once, and being who I am, smiled and waved while saying hi. She says nothing and just blankly stares. Okay, unfriendly. My city is rife with them. I move about my day. As time passes, I realize that this woman constantly rhinoceros stomps throughout the day and night. On more than one occasion, I've woken up at 3 or 4 in the morning, which is weird, only to realize it's their elephant feet banging on the floor, my ceiling. Usually I am the type of person to confront someone, but these days you could be killed for anything, so I held my tongue. The last straw came when I was home from work one night. I was speaking to my mother at normal decibels, and I hear the walrus footsteps. The thing is, they're a steady thump above where my voice happens to be as I move about my apartment. I realize that she is trying to get me to quiet down when she constantly slams her feet down like a hippo. So I notified the apartment, who gave her a lease violation. But she's still doing it. She's capable of being quiet because I hear her softly tow around at times. But she just doesn't want to be. Whenever I lived alone, I was always aware of any noise I made to be respectful. Some people like her clearly don't care. So what I have done is put on my PS4 and blast my television on high with the Skyrim menu theme whenever she's doing her monstrous stumps. I've thrown shoes at the ceiling to let her in that she's annoying. I currently work from home the next few weeks, but when I go back in the office, I'm going to have my Alexa play music on my iPod throughout the day, on the highest setting until quiet hours. The only problem is I don't want this to become an issue with other neighbors. Because of this, I may not implement the Alexa, but I will continue to notify the apartment until they do something about her. If anyone has any ideas, let me know. FYI, I am planning on moving out. There's no penalty for breaking the lease, only a relet fee of $900, but I'm gathering funds. Hellfreezers note, the best advice I can give you is stop making noise. I know it's in retaliation, but the fact is it just makes you look bad, and it really does weaken your case, because she could be recording you making the noise you make in retaliation to her. Then she has evidence that you're causing trouble, and the sounds you're blasting from Skyrim probably annoying your other neighbors as well. So stop doing that. Document everything she's doing and continue to report her. I'm sorry to say it, but you have to be the angel in cases like this. You can't do anything that might make it seem like it's mutually combative. Best of luck with it, and I hope you can move out soon. 2. Wife and I live in an apartment complex, but there is a building behind us, about 100 yards, that will use the green area next to their building for birthday parties and such, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. First off, I don't care, and good for them. However, each time they get together, the party gets louder and louder as the evening goes on. They normally start around 2 p.m. By 8 p.m., the party is really getting going. By 10 p.m., it's annoying. By midnight, cops show up to shut them down, almost every time. A few weeks ago, the wife and I were just chilling out watching TV on a Saturday afternoon. By 7, we had the TV up very loud, to hide the music coming from across the way. We have a glass sliding door that doesn't really help insulate the sound, so we looked at each other and decided to go down and talk to them, just to try and ask them to keep it down a bit. Not to stop, just lower the volume a bit. So we go down there and introduced ourselves and asked them to please turn it down just a bit. They were jamming out to Baby Shark when we walked down. They were nice and turned it down and apologized. All is well, and everyone was polite. I did state that we loved the fact that the family was active and having a good time, and that we live in a shared close community, and I was hoping that we could get along. We thanked them, and started walking back to our place. About halfway back, they turned it back up even louder than before. We turned around, and the family was pointing and laughing at us. Cool. Be that way. We waited about another hour and finally called the local police dispatch. I first apologized for bothering them for a minor complaint, but the dispatcher said we were the 5th call this afternoon about the noise, so I made the complaint and just waited. About 30 minutes later, a police officer showed up. The noise went down and the party kind of broke up. I kind of felt bad I sent the police to a kid's birthday party, but the family were being jerks. To be fair, this is not the first time the cops have been called on them. This was just my first. Quiet hours at the complex are from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. This was why I was hesitant to call. But I wanted to speak to someone and see if anything could be done. The complex does have a courtesy officer in the complex, but we could not get a hold of them. I call the emergency number and it states that this is only for actual emergencies, not complaints. I leave a message anyway to have it on record. I go by the office a few days later and no one knows about the message and that they have no record of any police being called to the complex. They asked me to write an email to them and I did. However, next weekend, the same thing happens. This time we didn't go down. At 10 p.m., I call and place a complaint with the police. They come out and the sun goes down. Same thing the next night and the next, so yeah. I'm being petty and calling every time they're raving in the parking lot during quiet hours and sending an email to the office. I get no reply. Just before Christmas, another neighbor in the same building had a fire. No one was injured and everyone was safe. But they all had to move out to repair the building. After the party family moved out, they came back to have another party in the green area again. Yep, I had to call again at 11 p.m. because they were just partying out of their cars with music cranking. Good times. 3. I'm on mobile, so please excuse the lack of formatting, as I just need to vent. There's 3 apartments, all connected. My boyfriend and I live on one side, my adult daughter, her boyfriend, and infant daughter live on the other. My boyfriend's 2 sisters, Betsy and Susan, and one of their girlfriends, Janet, live in the basement apartment. Right after my daughter moves in, Betty starts screaming and yelling at my daughter's boyfriend because she didn't like how his 80-year-old grandfather was parked. Obviously, he yelled back at her, and this was the beginning of an all-out war. Betty will not stop complaining to my boyfriend every time she hears the slightest noise coming from my daughter's place. I am talking normal house noises like vacuuming in the middle of the day, or walking down the stairs. If one of them has to get up to feed the baby in the middle of the night, Betty starts calling my boyfriend, yelling. They claim my daughter's dog is peeing on the floor and coming through their ceiling. This is an old building, and I'm assuming it's a leaky, rusty pipe, because even if the dog pees on the floor, it doesn't make sense that it floods into their place. 2 weeks ago, my daughter had emergency surgery for a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. By the time she got to the hospital, she lost a lot of blood and had to have a transfusion, and it was just a really bad time. Not even 2 days after this, my boyfriend loses his mind because he found out that she has a friend staying there. I could care less who she has staying there. She pays her own bills and cleared it with the landlord. But my boyfriend is livid because no one asked his permission or opinion and called my daughter over here to lecture her. 2 days after her surgery. He said a lot of really horrible stuff and insisted she kick the friend out and get rid of her dog. Also told her he's having his sister Betty call the landlord on her. Fast forward, Betty calls the landlord and somehow these two end up on a 3-way call with my daughter. Betty is ranting and raving and screaming like a lunatic, while my daughter is bawling her eyes out and can't get a word in. So now the landlord is coming to inspect all 3 apartments in a week. I'm not worried about inspection, but I'm sick of this family ganging up on my kid. Betty is a very large woman with a loud mouth and a bad temper, while my daughter is very quiet and passive. I stayed with her while she was in hospital, and she wouldn't ring the bell or call the nurse because she didn't want to bother them. I'm at my wit's end with Betty. She hasn't outright threatened physical violence, but my boyfriend is taking her side and has made comments alluding to it. Like how good his sister can fight, and how no one should mess with her. I should also point out that Betty and Janet are quite loud themselves. People coming and going at all hours and loud music in the middle of the night. Plus, they all do drugs. I don't know how any of them pay the rent because none of them work. The other sister isn't really part of the drama, just loud. And prior to them ganging up on my daughter, I just ignored it and minded my own business. This whole thing is ridiculous, and I feel like I'm living with the cast of a Jerry Springer show. Boyfriend is 41, by the way, and we are fighting non-stop about this. I am actively looking for my own place and plan on talking to the landlord myself. and I will call the cops if Betty so much as speaks to my kid. I'm trying to mind my own business and let this blow over, but she will not stop with her childish drama and continuous calls to my boyfriend with minor complaints and outright false accusations. Any ideas for petty revenge are appreciated so long as it's legal. She's not worth catching a charge over. Hellfreezer's note, the best thing you can do right now is just, as soon as possible, get yourself and your family out of there. Very obvious your boyfriend needs to be an ex if he can't support you in this. But your priority here shouldn't be getting revenge, you should be getting yourself and your family to safety. And I hope that's what the outcome is for all of you. 4. I live in a building with 14 other people. My boyfriend and I moved in here 2.5 years ago with one dog, and she had some anxiety to be left alone since our second one passed away due to an accident. Now I am home due to illness, and if I went away she came with me. Until 3 months later I collapsed and had a hospital rush. She barked for an hour. I got notified by the upstairs neighbors and I immediately took action. She got a bench and training. Within 2 weeks she learned to be alone and barking was done. We asked our neighbors often if they had issues. We got told they don't even know we are there. We asked permission for our other 2 dogs. One was born here, and they got immediate no barking training. Still all good, so I thought. Someone new moved in with a golden retriever who barked non-stop. Somehow I got blamed. I was even home asleep with the dogs when I got a phone call saying my dogs were barking again. I went upstairs to prove so. The golden retriever people moved out again and it became better, so I thought. I had a run-in with a neighbor from one level up who kicked my dog while I was taking her to the vet. When I confronted him, he tried to hit me. In defense, to create distance, I lifted my knee, and he said I tried to knee him. I went to the police and told them he used his daughter, who was a police officer, to control people in the building. His daughter got a verbal warning due to it, which caused an argument with her dad because she didn't know he did that, and apologized to me. He got warned to stay away from me. He was not to come near my door. Other people in the building caught on to what had happened and now also started standing up to him when he was arguing with his wife. They almost fight daily, often also in the hallway, and sometimes stuff gets thrown down the hall. He blames me for all. Some dirt on the stairs, my dogs. Door standing open, my dogs. Visitors being loud at 8 a.m., my dogs, somehow. I'm not joking, I am ignoring it all. I even ignored it when he came behind me on the stairs. I saw my boyfriend standing at the door waiting, and I told him to move in. The bad neighbor yelled at me and pushed me, saying I should go inside. I still ignored it, even though I was so angry. This was in the last year. I started avoiding going into the hallway with other people. I don't go out anymore unless someone is watching my dogs. I have my camera running when I go into the hallway. I even set up a security camera inside that proved he came knocking on my door. Short police visit solved that. I filmed inside my apartment. Someone came knocking, often on my door, softly, making my dog nervous. Neighbors then informed me it was him. So I opened the door when it occurred with my phone camera, pointed at the ground. When confronted, he said me and my mutts don't belong here and he'll prove my dogs are uncontrollable. Police gave him his second warning. It went all right. For Christmas, I gave everyone a card. He tore his apart and left it for me to find. I wrote different wishes to him, just less personal. That's how I knew it was his. Clearly, this was only a few days ago. Rude. I ignored it. Yesterday, I had the last Christmas gathering of the year and forgot our phones upstairs. When I rushed upstairs, he came down and looked in the apartment when I closed my door. I have a cabinet visible from the outside which holds my Disney collection. This is my thing. My boyfriend and I live with it, nobody else. We like it. So when he said out loud, "What a horrible cabinet," I got angry. I closed the door, grabbed the phones and went back down. When I walked down, he was standing there leaning against the wall, and I just passed by. He called me bitch. I will 100% admit I said something nasty back. Honestly, something his wife and neighbors had told me. I'm not proud of it, but I'm just sick of this guy. He's being rude to me because we're not past 50 years old like the rest. He also has been rude to the new couple that moved in 4 months ago. 2 women that are around our age and very polite. They started closing off from the rest of the neighbors, and us due to him. I seriously think I'm not the issue here, by the way, especially seeing his wife and daughter both apologize to me, and I'm on good terms with his wife. But she is also burdened by him, and I do not want to run to her for ripping up a card, because it's not her fault. What would you all do with a neighbor like this, who is not afraid to get physical? Hellfreezer's note, I think really you just need to keep on as you're keeping on. You're documenting problems when they happen, so just bide your time and eventually he'll do something that either gets him arrested or kicked out. Make sure you're reporting infractions to the whoever runs the building manager or the leasing agent or whatever. And I hope that gets taken care of for you soon. And quite frankly, you would have been completely justified in kicking him after he kicked your dog. What a sack of crap. 5. We have a story we would like to share. It's all true and can all be backed up. This is about our neighbors damaging our private property, and one neighbor being able to gain access to our private property. This access was granted to our neighbor who is a stranger to us by our Paulding County judicial system. To this day, we do not understand how anyone could grant access to someone else's private property. Our videos can be seen on YouTube under Walton's Valley. And also within the original post, which will be linked to, you can see on Reddit, is a detailed recounting of page numbers and book numbers that can be found in the Paulding County deed books. My name is Shirley of Walton's Valley. I've been a resident of Paulding County, Georgia for over 35 years. My husband's family has owned this property for over 100 years. I am reaching out to you today for assistance because we are in desperate need of your help. This is our story on how a stranger gained access to our private property. And we are sharing this because, since it happened to us, it could happen to you. After the death of my husband's father, who owned this private lake property, which we acquired shortly after his death, the remaining center portion of the lake, on January 31st, 2019, we have been constantly bullied and harassed with people trying to get access or doing damage to our private 3.83-acre lake. Our neighbor on the right side of us, up on the hill, who bought our aunt's house, would not stay off our property. She was constantly following us, filming us, and taunting us. She even took me to court when I had a landscaping company plant tree shrubs feet off the property line, on our side of the line, to try and get some peace from this neighbor. The judicial system found for me and dismissed that case. When the same neighbor bought the house on the hill, our Paulding County Tax Assessor's Office suddenly moved our property tax records with our address and moved it to that address. After months and months of sheer aggravation, we were able to get that cleared up, and the Paulding County Tax Assessor sent a letter to our mortgage company to clear our mortgage escrow account because of their tax error. Then around the end of 2019 to the first of 2020, during the time the Greystone Power Company was building their new headquarters in Paulding County, which was upstream from us, they had a breach, and all their silt and muck washed into our private lake property. This hit the Channel 2 News after they were issued a stop work order. We chose not to sue our neighbor, the Greystone Power Corporation, and instead allowed them to hire a Contour Environmental LLC company to clean up the spill in our lake. This process took over a year, with them taking core samples, testing and measuring, and then the cleanup. You can find the news videos I posted online. We are continuing to be harassed by another neighbor adjacent and across the lake, who purchased my husband's father's house from my husband's sister, who wanted access to our private property. This neighbor's property is adjacent to our property, shown in the plat in Paulding County Plat Book 65, page 17, and corrected Plat Book 66, page 56. All state edge of water is property line. We watched this neighbor take fish from our lake and not return them to the water. We watched this neighbor dangle fish from the end of a fishing pole and let 2 dogs nip and bark at the fish. We watched this neighbor place a small boat in our lake so late and dark at night that we were filled with fear that they might fall in and drown. We watched a small child lean way over and scoop at the water. And we have had constant stress over the liability should someone get hurt or injured or killed while on our private lake property by drowning. Our number 1 lake rule has always been catch and release only. A clause was placed by my husband's sister in a deed without our knowledge or consent, when they sold the house property adjacent to our lake property to their friend on February 13th, 2019, he in return sold it to our current neighbour on July 2nd, 2019, all on open records. After months and months of watching this neighbour across from us doing all this damage to our private property, and constantly worrying about liability and trying to keep everyone safe while the environmental cleanup was being done to our lake property, the dock in our lake on our property was removed on November 13th, 2020, after first contacting the Paulding County District Attorney, who consulted with the Paulding County Chief Judge for approval. January 31st, 2019, we received the remaining interest of Tract 3 of the lake, a property that my husband's sister and husband owned, which was the center portion of the lake. She was the executrix of my husband's father's will and had a legal obligation to see all deeds were properly executed. February 13th, 2019, the sellers, my husband's sister and her husband, sold their friend the house property, Tract 1, adjacent to the lake. In that deed, without our knowledge or consent, they place a clause granting access to our lake property 2 weeks after we had already received the remaining lake property in our January 31st, 2019. June 2nd, 2019. The new seller, my husband's sister's friend, sold the house to our current neighbour. The clause to access our private lake property was not in her deed. September 9th, 2019. Sellers, my husband's sister and her husband, prepared a corrective deed that was done to correct the acreage of Tract 3 of the lake. This was done because the surveyor had transposed two numbers. He put 104,593 square feet and should have been 140,593 feet. And at the top of the overall area, my daughter Lori had received .111 acres, and it was not deducted from the overall acre. During our almost 4-year court battle of our neighbor suing us for access to our property, our neighbor's attorney told the court we were being given 6.693 acres of property in this corrective deed, which was not what the deed stated. On May 10, 2021, we were sued by our neighbor for access to our private property. June 14, 2022, our judicial system gave our neighbor an order granting her access to our private property that we own and pay the property taxes on, which is not in a subdivision. June 5, 2024, our neighbor filed a motion for new trial. On this court date and on record, our neighbor's attorney threatened us with criminal action to gain an advantage in our civil case and matter. He violated Directory Rule 7-105A. Rules of Professional Conduct state Bar of Georgia 7-105 threatening criminal prosecution A. A lawyer shall not present, participate in presenting, or threaten to prevent criminal charges solely to obtain an advantage in a civil matter. And Rule 3.4, Fairness to opposing party and counsel. A lawyer shall not, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, present, participate in presenting, or threaten to present criminal charges solely to obtain an advantage in a civil matter. And nothing was done about it. June 27, 2024. Our judicial system signed a new order stating we owed our neighbor attorney fees and dock cost. Even though we were protecting our property that we own and pay the property and taxes on, we were exercising our constitutional right to protect and do what we want on our property. And if that was not enough, we came home on August 24th, 2024, and found 2 men chest deep in our lake property causing damage and improperly removing creosote posts from our private lake property. Our neighbor was out there on the bank helping them. They left all kinds of posts and shredded sharp pieces floating in our lake, which we are having to clean up. We just recently received a professional courtesy call from our attorney that helped us with this case, and he informed us that our neighbor is now trying to get another case against us because we are doing maintenance on our private lake property and because we are posting property signs on our private lake property and she doesn't like it. Our videos can be seen on YouTube under Walton's Valley. The neighbor truly thinks she can dictate what we do on our private property that we own and pay the taxes on. Sadly, our nightmare continues. We will be grateful for any help or advice. Hellfreezer's note: I think the best thing you need here is an attorney that specializes in land disputes. The nonsense with the deeds is certainly the first thing to clear up, speak with your husband's sister, find out why she thought she could just randomly include a clause granting access to property she didn't own. And if it's the case that she thinks she had ownership of it, figure out why she thought that, because as you say, you have the deed, it should clearly show that. So it's very confusing and a little concerning that the judge granted anyone access to your property when you have the documents proving that it is yours. And as I say, you definitely need someone who specializes in property disputes. You'll fare a lot better in that case. There's so many complicated areas of law that even just the lawyer you have right now may not be properly suited to it. You could also make some inquiries on the Our Legal Advice subreddit. There is a subreddit for everything, there really is. It's a very unpleasant situation you find yourselves in, and I do hope there's some resolutions soon. I've heard so many stories recently of local governments, ruling bodies, doing rather silly things with other people's property. So it doesn't surprise me that this has happened to you folks here. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Naughty Neighbours, episode 26. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do like and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to get more videos. And please do support me on my Patreon page if it is within your means to do so. I would very much appreciate that. Okay, as there's no other business today, I don't think so. I don't think I've got any shoutouts so far this year. Currently January 3rd as I'm recording this. Let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And let's do New Year's resolutions if you're comfortable sharing. As I say, I don't make resolutions. I simply do... I don't wait till the new year to make choices about things I have to do. I'll just do it whenever it needs doing. So right now my thing, it just so happens it was at the end of last year I decided I need to do this. I'll wait until certain things happen until I see what money I have, because doing things somehow always costs money. Why can't we live in a Star Trek-like utopia, eh? We're post-scarcity. Okay, silly dreams. Getting back to reality. So I bought myself a walking pad / treadmill. I had kind of dismissed them previously because I'm a big man, and I figured that what I weigh currently is probably too much for one of them. But I did find one that's allegedly rated for a much higher rate than I actually weigh, that should help me get to a lower rate. I need to lose quite a bit. Then I feel more comfortable again, and looking better will certainly be a nice bonus. And the fact of the matter is, when you weigh less, there's more clothes that fit you. Vanity? Me? Ha! Never. So, let me know what your New Year's resolutions are in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And this comes from Naughty Neighbours 25. And I think it was about what appeals to you about Christmas. With me, it was just the food, really. Today's answer comes from Lauren. Oh, my grandson. He's just starting to figure things out, and by next Christmas, he will be in full Santa mode. Kids definitely make the holidays more fun. That's very sweet. Thank you very much for your answer, Lauren. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. It's 7:21 in the morning. I should think about getting to bed. As always, a night owl. So I can get up a bit early because I need to go out and buy some things that I do not have at home. I need sparkling water. I tried some nice ones recently. I'm hoping they still have them in stock locally. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.